back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for we are back here on the GSMC.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, October 23rd. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to click that Super Chat button to create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we're going to start off the show. Originally, it was just going to be about Cooper Kupp, but news broke earlier this morning that the Chiefs traded for wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. They acquired him from the Tennessee Titans, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about that and the Cooper Kupp trade rumors as he's set to return from injury tomorrow night when the Rams take on the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, we'll get into all that. We'll talk about in the second part of the show, we'll get into the NFC South. We'll talk about that division. And there's a huge matchup coming up this weekend in that division between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. We'll talk about their struggles. Both teams coming off of losses, so we'll get into that. And, it's a huge game, so we'll get into that and the implications that come along with it. Then we'll get into some Aaron Rodgers comments after the Jets' loss to the Steelers and how he still remains confident that they could turn their season around, and I'll give you my thoughts on that. We'll talk about Tua. And, he's back at practice, pushing to play on Sunday against the Cardinals. So we'll get into all that and his comments that he made as well to the media. And then in the final part of the show, I'll give you my power rankings. I'll give you my top 5 teams after Week 7. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about a couple of wide receivers and news that broke regarding one of them. So DeAndre Hopkins, yes, he was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. He hasn't really done much this season. He's had a touchdown, but hasn't really done much. He's kind of been injured. He's dealing with the lower leg injury right now, something that's been bothering him really the whole year, and I guess that's going to continue. But yeah, this was something that the Chiefs had to do, and actually I'm looking for what the compensation was for it. I believe it was a conditional 5th-round pick that could turn into a 4th-round pick. But, so they traded a 5th-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, but yes, I believe it could turn into a 4th-round pick. But supposedly, according to Bleacher Report, the Chiefs tried to trade for Cooper Kupp. So that would have been interesting. So I guess they pivoted and went towards DeAndre Hopkins. It says the deal didn't happen because Kansas City didn't want to give up a high draft pick and needed a trade partner willing to eat a large chunk of the player's salary. And this is courtesy of Diana Rossini. So that's why Cooper Kupp did not end up going to the Chiefs. And that would have been crazy if they would have gotten him. So yeah, they pivoted. They went to DeAndre Hopkins. And yeah, so in exchange for a 5th-round pick, that could become a 4th-round pick. And I keep saying that, but that's what it is. But, I mean, this is something that the Chiefs had to do. They're, dealing with a lot of injuries at the position right now. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's hurt now. Rashee Rice is already, ruled out for the year, pretty much. Hollywood Brown, same thing. I think maybe he can come back for the postseason, but I think right now it's kind of a long shot, but we'll see. So they went to DeAndre Hopkins, and Hopkins right now on the season, looking at his stats, he has 15 receptions, 173 yards, and 1 touchdown. And, he's older. He's not the same DeAndre Hopkins that he once was. He's 32 years old. But look at where he's coming from. The Tennessee Titans are not a good team. They only have 1 win on the season, and that 1 win came against the Dolphins, who were playing a backup quarterback. I know the Titans, that was the game Will Levis got hurt, and Mason Rudolph had to come in, and they just ran the football the entire game. That's their only win. And now for DeAndre Hopkins, you're going from a team that, doesn't throw the football well to a team that has the best quarterback in the NFL. Now, is Patrick Mahomes playing like the best quarterback in the NFL this year? No. But he still is the best quarterback in the NFL. And this is going to help this passing game. You got the other guys, of course, once Juju Smith-Schuster comes back, you have McCole Hardman, you have Sky Moore, you have Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, of course. And, you're still waiting on Isaiah Pacheco to come back. Kareem Hunt's done a nice job, but you needed something else. And I think there is some juice left in the tank when it comes to Hopkins. But, again, you're not going to get the DeAndre Hopkins from the Texans or the Cardinals. But I think you will get a good enough version if he's healthy where this is going to help the team. And the Chiefs didn't give up a lot to get him. So, if it doesn't work out, it is what it is. But, I like it for the Chiefs. It's a low-risk, high-reward trade. And, Hopkins with Patrick Mahomes, that could work. It probably would have been better had this trade happened, a few years ago. But, like I said, I think Hopkins does have some left in the tank if he's healthy. So we'll see what his status is going into this game against the Raiders. And I think that's a good way to kind of break him in because the Raiders are not very good this year. And the Chiefs, I know they lost to them on Christmas last year, but the Raiders are, they're not having a good year. And I think this is a good way to, get him involved, and maybe he does well if he plays. So I do like the trade, though, for the Chiefs. But let me know what you guys think about that trade. So the main thing I was going to start off with is talking about Cooper Kupp. And there's trade rumors regarding Cooper Kupp. So he has been a full participant in practice. He's going to be playing tomorrow night when the Rams take on the Vikings. But, yeah, he's been involved in some trade rumors. And, there's been some mixed reports. The Rams supposedly are making him available. And, there are teams out there that need wide receivers, the Chiefs being one of them. And like I said, they tried to get Cooper Kupp. But, you think of some other teams as well. The Steelers, they come to mind as a team that needs another receiver. That would be an interesting trade if Cooper Kupp got traded to the Steelers. But, yeah, that's a team that comes to mind. I'm trying to think of who else. Because supposedly there was several teams that reached out. And, looking at, some of the teams that are, in a playoff spot. I don't know if any of the NFC North teams would trade for him. I don't think the Vikings would. The Packers are not going to. The Bears. The Lions, I don't think that's going to happen. The Eagles, maybe. As a number 3 wide receiver to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Commanders would be interesting. I think the Commanders could be a possibility, but that's just me. You look at, the teams in the NFC South. That's also possible because the Buccaneers, and we'll talk about the Buccaneers and the Falcons in the next segment, but, the Falcons, I feel like they could definitely use another receiver. Drake London's been good this year. Darnell Mooney's been good this year. And, Raymond McLeod has made plays for them. But I feel like if you added Cooper Kupp to that offense, that would really help it out. The Buccaneers might have to do it just out of pure desperation because your top 2 wideouts are out. Mike Evans at least will be back sometime this year. Chris Godwin's out for the year. So maybe, the Buccaneers could be a team. And then looking at the end, they're not going to trade him within the division. The Seahawks are fine at receiver. Again, the Rams are not going to trade him within the division. And then you look at the AFC. The Bills, they already traded for Amari Cooper. I don't see them trading for another receiver. If they somehow got Cooper Kupp, if they wanted to do that, that would be insane, but that's not going to happen. The Ravens, I still think the Ravens need another pass catcher. However, Rashad Bateman played really well the other night, so, that's encouraging. Zay Flowers has been good. Mark Andrews got it going. You got Isaiah Likely as the other tight end. And Derrick Henry is just an absolute stud coming out of the backfield. So maybe they don't trade for one. I still think maybe they should, but that's just me. Like I said, the Steelers, Texans are okay at receiver. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Broncos. No, I don't think the Broncos are going to. I would definitely say maybe one of the two teams in the NFC South. That's possible. The Commanders. We'll see though, because they do have Puka Nacua coming back, and they do have some other young guys that they like. And Cooper Kupp does have an injury history. Dealt with injuries in 2022. Didn't start off the year. Didn't play the first, several games of the year last year. And, after week 1, you thought, wow, Cooper Kupp is back, and then he's hurt again. Even though it's not really his fault. It was really just how he got tackled. He suffered a high ankle sprain. So, he's still a good player. And I think it depends on maybe how this game goes on Thursday. Maybe the Rams win, and then they say, you know what, why are we going to trade him when we're in the thick of it? And, Matthew Stafford, he's been, his name's been coming up in trade rumors. I don't know if that's going to happen. Probably not. But they're going to be getting Puka Nacua back soon. He's starting to practice. So, if you somehow find a way to win on Thursday against the Vikings, and you look at the division, the Rams are by no means out of it. So if you beat the Vikings and you get your top 2 wideouts back, it's a whole new season. So I think they may trade him if they just believe, we got no shot. But I don't know. The 49ers are struggling. Look, the Cardinals beat them, but I feel like the Rams could get even with them when they play again this year. And the Seahawks, they're inconsistent. So the Rams are by no means out of it. But we'll see. Maybe they do end up dealing them. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about these trade rumors for Cooper Kupp. Let me know what you guys think about DeAndre Hopkins being traded to the Chiefs. Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will discuss the NFC South matchup between the Falcons and the Buccaneers. We'll talk about the implications with this matchup. So that's what we'll do when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Falcons-Buccaneers game that's coming up this Sunday. It's a big matchup. It's a rematch from a couple weeks ago when the Falcons won in overtime. Kirk Cousins threw for over 500 yards. They won 36-30. And both teams are coming off of losses. The Falcons losing 34-14 to the Seahawks. Buccaneers losing on Monday to the Ravens 41-31. And they lost both of their top wide receivers in that game. So it's going to be a little bit different than the last time these two teams met. And it's weird. This division is strange. And when you see what the Panthers are doing, I mean, they got no chance right now. The Saints dealing with all of their injuries. It's going to come down to these two teams. And I know that, again, the Buccaneers are down their top two wide receivers, but I still think that they can win this game because the Falcons just, for some reason, they've been inconsistent. And, you thought that this offense turned the corner when they won the overtime game against the Buccaneers. But, against the Panthers, they really relied upon the running game. I mean, Kirk Cousins was all right, but, again, they relied upon the running game. And then this past week, I don't know what happened. Kirk Cousins threw 3 interceptions, and the defense got shredded by Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense. Well, I mean, the defense really hasn't been great this year. But, yeah, it's just the Falcons are a weird team. And, you would have thought that by now they would have figured it out, but it's not the case. This is a huge game coming up. Both teams are 4-3 on the year. I think, in my opinion, this is a bigger game for the Bucs because I did bring up what they got coming up on the schedule. They already lost to the Ravens, and I think if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin don't get hurt, I mean, this game definitely would have been different. Although the Bucs are dealing with their own injuries on defense as well. The defense has not played well the last couple of weeks. I know against the Saints, I mean, Baker kind of, caused some of the points to be scored for the Saints just because, he turned the ball over a handful of times. But yeah, against the Falcons, they weren't great in Week 5. They shut the Saints out in the second half. So yeah, they didn't have a good first half. They didn't have a good second quarter, the Bucs as a team. But they shut them down in the second half, and then against the Ravens had their way. Lamar Jackson had 5 touchdowns. Derrick Henry ran all over them in the second half. So yeah, it hasn't been good for the Bucs defense. And now you're going up against the Falcons again. Now it's a road game for the Falcons. So at least you're going to be at home. But the following week, you take on the Chiefs in Arrowhead, which is probably going to be a loss, especially when you're down your 2 wideouts. And then you got the 49ers after that, which, the 49ers have their own problems, but I kind of expect the 49ers to win. So the Bucs are going to have to rely upon their running game, I think. You're going to see that 3-headed monster that they've been talking about with Sean Tucker, Rashad White, Bucky Irving. Those guys are going to have to, step up their game because they're shorthanded right now. And it's the same thing that goes with the other receivers. Jalen McMillan, who goes from being the number 3 wide receiver to, I guess, the number 1 receiver. Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer. Those guys are going to have to step up. Cade Otton, he was making plays for them on Monday against the Ravens. Some tough catches. Those guys are going to have to step up. And like I said, I do think this is still a winnable game for the Bucs because the Falcons have not been great. They've been inconsistent. And just to kind of go through the league rankings for these teams. So, in terms of passing yards per game, they're both top 10. Baker Mayfield's had a good year, although he's been turning the ball over a decent amount recently. But he has 18 touchdowns right now to 7 picks, which is good. Both quarterbacks have around 1,800 yards passing. Kirk Cousins has 8 less touchdowns. He has 10 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. But yeah, both teams are top 10 or top 5 in passing yards. The Bucs are 8th in rushing yards per game, averaging 135.1. And yeah, they're going to have to lean on that in this game coming up. The Falcons are 16th They're averaging 119.6 points per game. And then points per game, the Bucs are 4th, and the Falcons are 15th. They're averaging 23.3 points per game. And then in terms of their defense, Bucs defense is 29th against the pass. I mean, you saw that. Lamar Jackson carved them up. And Kirk Cousins, of course, threw for 500 yards against them. I don't expect him to do that in this game, but I do expect him to play well, or at least play better than how he did against the Seahawks. And the Falcons' defense is actually 9th against the pass. They're giving up an average of 205.4, but they did not play well against Geno Smith and the Seahawks. And then rushing yards, I mean, both teams are, more towards, the other half of the league. So the Bucs are 19th against the run, and the Falcons are 24th. So there's definitely going to be both teams are going to be leaning on the run at certain points. And then points allowed, Bucs defense is 28th, Falcons defense is 22 or 22nd. So yeah, I mean, I expect this to be competitive. I don't want to take the Falcons because I said that both teams would split against each other, but I mean the Bucs are down their top 2 wideouts, and so it's really tough. The other receivers are going to have to step up, and I went over both teams' schedules, and the Bucs do have some winnable games coming up after the tough stretch. They still got the Panthers twice. They got the Giants in there. I mean, you're going to get Mike Evans back eventually. It's just right now you're just going to have to, tread some water. And that's why, again, losing that game on Thursday night a couple weeks ago, that was huge because, you win that game, you could afford to drop some of these games coming up. And look, I don't think the Falcons are going to run away with the division. I think they'll keep it close. It's just this is a very important game for the Buccaneers. And you saw how Baker Mayfield struggled against the Ravens after Mike Evans got hurt. So, and this Falcons defense is not as good as the Ravens. So, I think Baker is still going to find a way to play well. He's got to limit the turnovers, though. Got to make better decisions. It's going to be tough. They got to find a way. The defense for the Bucs has to step up and play better. And I don't expect Kirk Cousins to throw for 500 yards. I think the Bucs will have a better game plan for that to limit that. But yeah, it's going to be tough. But these are the two teams that are going to be battling it out. Because now, the Saints, after their hot start with all their injuries, they're not a part of the conversation right now. So it's going to come down to these two teams. And, it might take 8 or 9 wins to win this division. Because that's what it took last year. That's what it took the year before. The Bucs finished 8-9 with Tom Brady in his final year. They won the division. 9-8 is what won the division for the Bucs again last year. Might be what wins it again this year. I had the Falcons at 10-7 before the year started. So I think they should trade for Cooper Kupp. The Falcons. One of these two teams should. Why not? But we'll see. But yeah, this is a very important game. And yeah, I'm doing this preview now just because tomorrow will be my last show before I go on my little trip for the weekend. So that's kind of why we're previewing this game a little bit earlier. Tomorrow we're going to preview pretty much all the games going into the weekend. Of course, we have the game tomorrow night, so we'll preview that at the start. And yeah, so that's what's coming up between today and tomorrow. So, but yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens in this game. And for the Falcons, they're just looking to find that consistency. They just have been inconsistent this year, this offense. And Kirk Cousins is looking for that consistency because he has it. He had the good game against the Bucs, but it's just the turnovers. I don't know what happened in that game that he just was turning the ball over. So, and you see Drake London has benefited from having Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. Kyle Pitts has had some good games this year. The running game has been solid, but you want to see this passing game really get it going and maintain that for the rest of the year. And that really hasn't been the case. So, we'll see. And we still got some time before the trade deadline. So, is there going to be more trades on the way? We'll have to wait and see. But this is a very important game between these two teams. And could very well decide the division, depending on who wins. I mean, if the Falcons win, they're 2-0 against the Bucs this year. That's not good for the Bucs. So, this is a very important game. It's more important, I think, for the Bucs. So, and they're down their top two wideouts, so it's going to be tough. But let me know what you guys think about this game. Who do you think will win? Who do you think will win the NFC South? Let me know in the comments. So, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the Super Chat button to create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Aaron Rodgers and some of the comments that he made after the Jets lost to the Steelers, how he still has confidence in the team, and he feels the Jets can still turn it around. So we'll get into all that. I'll give you my thoughts on it when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we're going to get into talking about Aaron Rodgers and his recent comments after the Jets lost to the Steelers. So let's kind of go through what he had to say, and I'll give you my thoughts on that and whether I believe the Jets can turn their season around. So this is what he said on the Pat McAfee show. So he said, "We've been in this spot before." He said, "We," meaning myself and some of the guys that I've played with. There's the semi-famous relaxed statement that was after 3 weeks going to week 4 of the 2014 season where we turned it around, but people maybe forget about 4-6 in 2016 when we weren't playing well at all and went through a rough stretch and just kind of got waxed in Tennessee. I do remember that. And came back home and we ran the table. Won 8 straight and went to the NFC Championship game, eventually losing to Atlanta. But that was fun stretch. We got hot and we started to believe. The power of belief is a snowball that can start an avalanche. And that's what we need, and it starts with me. So again, I know people say he throws his teammates under the bus and, he's the reason that Robert Saleh got fired. This is what a lot of people will say. And again, we don't know whether it was one way or the other. Only time will tell. But he does show accountability in some way. He has acknowledged that he needs to play better. So I know people say, again, he criticizes his teammates openly and that should be done behind closed doors. I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Because you could tell, I mean, Mike Williams, yeah, he wants to get traded. He wants out of there. Because he had a catch on Sunday. It was like for 15 yards. And then, he already saw, like, from the sidelines, they were telling him to come off the field, I believe. And he was just shaking his head like, come on, leave me out there. Like, I can make plays for this team. I can help this team. But it's just now with Devontae Adams there, I mean, he really has no role on this team. So he could be traded. I mean, that's a guy that, we just talked about receivers that could be traded. That's someone that maybe, some of the teams that we talked about could go after. We'll see. And actually the Chargers could be another team too. I mean, look, I know they lost to the Cardinals, but I know some people are like, maybe a Mike Williams Chargers reunion. That'd be interesting. But more quotes from Rodgers. He said, I felt like we've been loose. We've been having good practices, but for whatever reason, there's been a little bit of tightness on game day, and that's got to start with me. I've got to bring the same energy during the week and lead with that energy. I think there's been some good leadership moments, but I need to be a great leader. Just doing as much as I can to make sure those guys play free and not worry about making mistakes. When something bad does happen, how do we all respond, myself included? I think we can do a little bit better. That starts with me, and I'm going to set the tone this week with that. It's going to be interesting to see how we respond to this. We're in the fire for sure. It's been a rough 4-game stretch for us, coming off of a win that everybody feeling really, really good about on a Thursday night. We've got to reset and get this thing moving in the right direction starting Sunday at New England. I mean, look, that is a get-right game for the Jets, but then again, the Jets have not played great. They only have one more win than the Patriots right now. So yeah, I don't know. I think the Jets should win on Sunday, but I don't know. I don't know. But, I mean, I agree with what he's saying. I mean, he's got to play better. He has to play better, but the other thing too is the defense has to play better. The defense cannot stop the run. Can't. And that's something that I don't think they're going to be able to solve during the season. Now, Hassan Reddick is supposed to come back. So at least that's going to help the pass rush. But I think, people in the media have put it perfectly, is that, and I didn't say this when I recapped the game yesterday, because I was going to, is just they are a collection of, right now they're playing as a collection of talent. They're not playing as a team. And that is a problem. And I don't know if they're going to be able to solve it. Now, Aaron Rodgers does cite some of the moments that he's had in his career where teams have struggled and he was able to turn it around and play some really good football. 2014, he ended up winning MVP. 2016, he could have won MVP, but Matt Ryan definitely deserved it. It was either Matt Ryan or Tom Brady that year. Matt Ryan deserved it in 2016. But Aaron Rodgers, when they ran the table, that was vintage Aaron Rodgers. He played as good as anybody. Up until the NFC Championship game against the Falcons, which they lost. But the thing is, though, 2014 was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Aaron Rodgers is not the same player. I will acknowledge that. He's not the same player. 2016 was 8 years ago. But the example I did cite is from a couple of years ago. 2022. Now, they didn't make the playoffs, but the Packers were struggling. And it looked like, they got no shot at making the playoffs. And again, they still didn't make the playoffs, but that team did get hot, and they rattled off a winning streak. I forget how many games it was. And they had an opportunity to make the playoffs. They did lose to Detroit, and maybe that's what ends up happening with the Jets. They get hot, and then they end up losing the last game of the season and miss out on the playoffs. But that happened 2 years ago. So that was like the most recent thing that has happened in Aaron Rodgers' career, where teams struggled, but they got hot. However, they fell short of the playoffs. Now, 2 years does seem like a long time ago, just because, since then Aaron Rodgers, tore his Achilles, and, he's a little bit older. But so that was another example that you could bring up where they did get close, but they ended up not making it. So you could probably say that could happen with the Jets. They get close and then they don't make it. So, but he continues to be positive. He continues to be optimistic that they're going to turn it around. But, when is that going to happen? You're really running out of time. The Jets have to really string together a bunch of wins. And the other thing, too, is when it comes to those runs that the Packers have had with Rodgers and them turning their seasons around, Mike McCarthy was a respectable head coach. Definitely has lost respect from a lot of people because of how his tenure has gone with the Cowboys. But at the time, Mike McCarthy was a respectable head coach. He was one of the better head coaches in the National Football League when the Packers went on those winning streaks. And then you go back to a couple of years ago. Matt LaFleur has really turned into one of the best head coaches in the league currently. When it comes to the Jets, you have an interim head coach in Ulbrich who's unproven. And this team shows that coaching really does matter. And I brought up all the examples of, star quarterbacks changing teams and going to, new places. There were established head coaches there. There is not an established head coach with the Jets. And that is a problem. The team continues to be penalized. I just don't really know if the Jets are going to be able to turn it around here. Now you got Tua coming back for the Dolphins most likely, and we're going to talk about him in the next segment. But, yeah, I don't know. The odds are stacked against the Jets. And again, their season is by no means over because you look at the AFC, they still got a shot at a wild card. And maybe they do find it and they make a run at the division. But I think the division is a long shot right now. So I'm probably going to concede there that they got no chance of the division. But they still have an outside chance to make the playoffs as a wild card. But that's not what Aaron Rodgers was brought in to do. He was brought in to, bring this team to the playoffs, win a division, and host a playoff game, and go on a deep playoff run. And right now this team doesn't even look like it's going to make the playoffs. So, can the Jets turn it around? Right now I would lean towards no, just because I thought maybe against the Steelers they could have got a win there. They were up 15-6, but everything just fell apart after that. And then the week before that, they should have beaten Buffalo, and you lost that. Once the Steelers got the momentum shifted towards them, they ran all over the Jets. The Jets never recovered after the first Rodgers interception. So, but you're playing against the Patriots. The Patriots are not very good. So maybe you get a win there. The two toughest games that they have remaining on their schedule is the Texans, who they'll be playing next Thursday night on Halloween, and then they take on the Bills in Buffalo. They still got to do that. So if you could somehow get a win here against the Patriots, I'm saying somehow, they should beat the Patriots. And then maybe, the Texans, it's a team that, I'd say they have a shot to beat them. Even though I think the Texans are a better team. They're better coached. But it is at home. And I don't believe Nico Collins. If they get Nico Collins back for that game, it's going to be even tougher. But also the Texans have run the football well this year. And the Jets struggle with that. So they could just rely on Joe Mixon to run the football, and the Jets will have no answer for it. So, well, we'll see what happens next week. But the Texans and the Bills, those are the two toughest games remaining. I don't really know if we're going to get a run the table here this time. And when he had the famous relax statement, that was early on in the season. That was when the Packers were 1-2. Now we're at the halfway point of the season. So I don't know. And look, Rodgers is not the same player he once was. He's not playing good, but I don't think he's Peyton Manning in his final season. Because Rodgers has made some good throws this year. He's had good moments. It's just he's turning the ball over more. He doesn't move around like he used to. And part of that is because right now he's dealing with a little bit of an injury because the offensive line has not done a great job at protecting him at times. So, yeah, it's going to be tough for the Jets to turn it around. I'm leaning towards no, but it ain't over till it's over. So, we'll see if that ends up being true. But guys are going to have to start playing better. Garrett Wilson, I don't know what happened on that pass that Rodgers had where he was wide open and he just didn't catch it and it ended up getting intercepted. I don't know what happened on that. Breece Hall has been playing well these last couple of weeks. But, guys on the offense are going to have to step up, including the quarterback, and the defense needs to play like it should. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, if you get Reddick back and you get him in the building and he's playing, I mean, that gives you another pass rusher. But they struggle at stopping the run, and I don't know how they're going to fix that. So, but let me know what you guys think, though. Can the Jets turn their season around? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about Tua, his comments that he made to the media. He's trying to play on Sunday. We'll see if he does end up coming back when the Dolphins take on the Cardinals. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about Tua Tagovailoa and him returning to practice, or set to practice today, and he's hopeful to play, wants to play on Sunday when the Dolphins take on the Cardinals. So I wanted to get into what Mike McDaniel had to say, what he had to say on his return. So we have Nelson, who is the host of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, in the chat saying, you hear the news about Chiefs getting D-Hop. Well, we did touch upon it at the start of the show because I was originally going to just talk about Cooper Kupp and his trade rumors, but then I woke up this morning and I saw that the Chiefs acquired D-Hop, so we had to talk about that. So it was a combination of those two things at the top. But I do like the trade. Like I said, I think it's a low risk, high reward. If D-Hop can come in, better quarterback play than what he was getting over in Tennessee. Even though Mahomes hasn't been great, I do think he could help the Chiefs out. So, all right, so let's get into what Mike McDaniel and Tua had to say on Tua coming back. So, Mike McDaniel said, our plan is to start him practicing on Wednesday. The clearing of the league's concussion protocol doesn't come until after some of the activity, but we're doing so in the hope of everything going well so that he can play Sunday. But that is to be determined. The reason he's coming back now is because the medical experts have deemed it's safe for him to return, so I don't mess with timelines or try to overcook or forecast. You lean on experts on matters of the career, and that's what we're doing here. Tua is very excited about his return to action, but he's also just frustrated. He was frustrated watching the games on the sidelines because the Dolphins have not been great. It has not been great for them. And he said, what I do know is that the team did what was best in the interest of me and that I'm a competitor. And given what the doctors have told me, that having a substantial amount of time to rest and recover would have been good for me, I think they did what was best in terms of protecting myself from myself. Now, they asked him if he was going to wear a Guardian cap, and he said he's not going to. I mean, he answered that right away. No hesitation. He said no, and he said it's a personal choice, which, again, for a lot of us, we would like to have seen him maybe wear it just because of the history. But he's not going to. He's dealt with several concussions over the course of his career. I mean, going back to 2022, the play against the Bills, the Bengals, where he got taken off the field, was stretchered off the field, and then you had, the game against the Packers as well. But last year wasn't a problem. But then it happened again when, he took off for a first down and, ran into DeMar Hamlin, and then that was his other concussion. Nelson also says, on the topic of Tua, how do you feel about him not wanting to wear a Guardian cap? Yeah, I do kind of wish he would. Because again, like I said, because of the injury history, but do you think it's because he doesn't want to feel weak? I'm going to say no, because I don't really know what his thought process is on that. I mean, look, Jonathan Taylor wears it. Jonathan Taylor's a running back. There's guys that are wearing it, so I don't really, it's just, I mean, on the surface, it looks as it's added protection. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know it doesn't really help prevent anything, but, it couldn't hurt to wear it. But I don't know. And, I know the media was asking him about, why does he still want to play? I mean, he said he loves the game. This is what he said. I appreciate your concern. I really do. He said, I love this game, and I love it to the death of me. That's it. So he just wants to continue playing. He wants to take the risk. And then he also said, I think the brain, there's just a gray area where it comes to that. If you do know that you're going to get long-term disease from it, I just think that there's a lot of gray with it. For me, this is what I love to do. This is what makes me happy, and I'm going to do it. That's it. And then he also said, how much risk do we take when we get up in the morning to go drive to work? You can get into a car crash. Everything, I think, takes risk. So to answer that question, every time we all suit up, we've taken a risk that we can potentially get hurt, whether it's a concussion or a broken bone. Anything, you get up off the bed the wrong way, you can potentially risk you spraining your ankle. There's just risk in any and everything. I'm willing to play the odds. That's it. Yeah, it's his personal choice. If he wants to keep playing, it's up to him. As much as, a lot of us probably think maybe it's best if he walks away, that's what he wants to do. He wants to keep playing. So I can't really, argue with what he says. I mean, it's up to him. It's not us going out there and playing on Sunday and playing quarterback. It's him. So you just hope for the best. But every time he drops back or any time he tries to take off with the football and run with it, you're going to want to just look away because you're afraid that he's going to get hit the wrong way and it's going to happen again. But let's just hope that's not the case. Let's just hope he's able to stay upright, doesn't take any more hits. And, the Dolphins, they could possibly turn their season around because this offense, they need something because right now they are, they're struggling. They have somehow found their way to second place in the division because, we just talked about the Jets and their struggles. But the Dolphins, they can get themselves back in the conversation with Tua. And this would help Tyreek Hill. This would help Jalen Waddle because those guys really have been non-existent since Tua's gone down. Tyreek Hill had an unbelievable year last year, and that was with Tua being healthy for the whole year. So if you can get Tua back, this team is going to look a lot different. Because right now they are currently 2-4. So they got the Cardinals coming up, then they're at Buffalo against the Bills, at the Rams, home against the Raiders, home against the Patriots, at the Packers on Thanksgiving, home against the Jets, at the Texans, home against the 49ers, at the Browns, and then at the Jets. So they do got some tough games on the schedule. But I do think that with Tua, they can get themselves back in the conversation. For a wild card, definitely. Because right now the teams that occupy the wild card spots are the Colts at 4-3, Broncos are at 4-3, Chargers are a half game back, Bengals 3-4, they're 1 game back. The Dolphins are 1.5 games back. So I think they could turn it around with Tua as long as he's healthy, and get themselves back in the conversation and maybe go for a wild card. But again, I can't really argue with what he said. He wants to take that risk. I think it's interesting. Like, you don't really know like who he's going to see, and the medical experts are telling him it's safe, go back out. But maybe there's some out there that probably would say no, it's not. But he loves this game and he wants to keep playing it. And the other thing too is, I didn't even bring this up, is the contract. He just signed that big contract, and be hard to walk away from that money. And the Dolphins, they put this huge investment in him. They don't want him walking away either. But if he ended up retiring, then that's a different conversation. But both sides, they want to see Tua back out there. So again, just gotta hope for the best, because it's a tough situation, and it's just you don't want to see him take another hit because you have no idea like what's gonna happen. We'll see. But if he comes back and he's able to finish up the year healthy, that's great. But we still got another half of the season to go, and anything can happen. But we're hoping for the best. We are hoping for the best. And I know the players are definitely itching for Tua to come back, because they really need something to reignite this offense. Because it's been that Colts Dolphins game, it's just that was a very boring game. And I took the Dolphins in that game, at least to cover. They of course didn't. They were covering the whole game, and then the Colts, they kicked a field goal towards the end of the game to put them up by 6. But yeah, that was some boring football. So, but yeah, they could get back into the conversation. If Tua could stay healthy and get this offense going, they could definitely make a run at a wild card spot. I think right now the Bills, they're going to run away with this division. But with Tua coming back, the Dolphins can be a team that makes the wild card. If he can stay healthy, that's what it comes down to. So, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have not done anything since he's gotten hurt. They've really been non-existent. And, you get him back, and that opens up the running game too. Because the Dolphins have some good running backs on this team. Now, some of them just can't stay healthy. Like Devon Achane just cannot stay healthy. He's a very good running back, but he just cannot stay healthy. And it definitely will help the defense out, knowing that they have an offense that could definitely, that could put up points. You can get your quarterback back. So, we'll see what happens. They do got some tough games coming up, and getting Tua back is big to try to get them back in the conversation of things. But yeah, see, I am more optimistic in, if you get a healthy Tua back, I'm more optimistic in the Dolphins turning their season around than the Jets, which again doesn't fare well for my Jets take earlier this year, or before the year started. But that's just where we're at right now. And the Dolphins, it's going to be interesting too. Like, if Dolphins do turn it around and they make the playoffs, but they still don't win a playoff game, what happens to Mike McDaniel? Does he end up getting let go? Or are they going to continue on with him because, Tua got hurt? We'll see. But, we talked about the Dolphins, during the offseason and how, they got to win a playoff game. They got to go further. They can't have this, late collapse. But this year's kind of gone different just because your quarterback's been hurt. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, McDaniel wants Tua back because if the Dolphins can do well and maybe get to the playoffs in advance, his job is safe. But we shall see. But let me know what you guys think, though, about Tua coming back. Do you think the Dolphins can turn their season around and get themselves back in the conversation with the playoffs? How do you see Tua playing? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about my power rankings for this week, my top 5 teams after Week 7. And that is how we will end off the show for today. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to get into my power rankings after Week 7, give you my top 5 teams in the NFL after Week 7, and we're at the halfway point of the season, pretty much. Season goes really fast, so we just got to keep enjoying it, even though there's been a ton of injuries this year, and, I tried to be positive and say, hopefully we don't have as many injuries as last year, but it's bad. It's bad. Injuries are inevitable, unfortunately. So let's kind of go through it. A little bit different. Teams have kind of moved around outside of maybe the number 1 spot. So we'll start off with the... Got to switch some things around here. But starting off with the number 5 spot, I have the Green Bay Packers. They played a very good game with the Houston Texans. That was one of the best games of the weekend, winning on a last-second field goal by Brandon McManus. And they've been playing well. They had a pass rush in this game. That was something that they didn't have last week. But they were able to get after C.J. Stroud. And that was big. I mean, C.J. Stroud only had 86 yards passing in the game. The Texans did run the football well on them, so that's something that's still a concern is the run defense. But the defense did play well. And Jordan Love, is still throwing interceptions, but, he's been throwing a lot of touchdowns too. And since he's come back, the Packers have looked like a different team. They did a good job at, treading water until he came back. They almost came back against the Vikings, but 3 straight victories since then against the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Texans. Now you got the Jaguars this week, which I think they should win, and that would get you to 6-2. And then after that, you got the Lions on the schedule, which is a game I am really looking forward to. That is the following Sunday. So But, yeah, Jordan Love is playing well. And, I talked about this before the year started. They don't have a superstar wide receiver, but they got some talented wide receivers on this team. And every week it's somebody different. Whether it's Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks or Jaden Reed, they got a ton of weapons on this team. And, Josh Jacobs has done a nice job for them this year. He had his first receiving touchdown against the Texans, the first receiving touchdown of his career, which is really hard to believe. I feel like he would have had at least one at this point. But anyways, he's done well for them. They got two young tight ends. Tucker Kraft has looked good for them. And like I said, the defense, has been good. They got to C.J. Stroud. So, you got to like what the Packers are doing at this point. And, that NFC North is the best division in football. And it's not even close. Right now, all 4 teams occupy a playoff spot. And we could very well see all 4 teams make the playoffs. Because now, the Bears, they've started to play better. The Vikings were undefeated up until they lost to the Lions. So, it's the best division in football. And the Packers with Jordan Love, they are a very good team, and it seems like they're starting to really round into form as we move along here. But yeah, I got them at the number 5 spot. Then at the number 4 spot, we have the Minnesota Vikings. So they kind of took a little bit of a dip after their loss to the Lions. However, they still played well. The defense, they were going up against a really good offense in the Lions. So I'm not really surprised that they ended up losing the game here. But they had a chance. They had a chance, and they were up 10-0. But the Lions came back and answered. And then it took a game-winning field goal by Jake Bates for them to win. But the Vikings still played well. Aaron Jones has run the football well for them. Sam Darnold, he's an MVP candidate with how he's played this year. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison have played well. And they're going to be getting T.J. Hawkinson back, too, at some point. So the offense is only going to get better. This is a great roster. It really is. And, Brian Flores has done a great job with this defense. But, again, it's amazing how, they've been undefeated all this time and then one loss and they're in second place. I know I've said that several times already this week, but still, they already, dropped down to second because of the loss. But, it would have been different had the Lions just, because the Lions took over that game. They were up 21-10, and you thought, they're going to run away with this thing. But the Vikings, they responded. They kept it close. They took the lead at one point when they had the defensive touchdown. After I think David Montgomery fumbled. So, they still hung in there with the Lions. This is a good team. So far, both NFC North matchups that we got involving the Vikings, between the Packers and the Vikings, that turned out to be a good game, tale of two halves. And then this game with the Lions turned out to be very entertaining as well. So the Vikings still deserve to be in the top 5, but they they fell down a little bit after that loss. So we move on to the number 3 spot. I do have the Lions. And that might be a little bit surprising. But, yeah, I still have them. They moved up. They're at 3. That was an impressive win. I know we talked about this before the game against the Vikings. How is this team going to look now without Aiden Hutchinson? Now, they still miss Aiden Hutchinson rushing the passer. So they got to figure something out. Could they maybe go out and trade for a pass rusher? We'll see. But even with Aiden Hutchinson being out, this team is still very good. And their offense can put up points with anybody. And that's why they won this game. The Vikings were very good at stopping the run, but, going up against Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they struggled. David Montgomery got banged up in this game. Jahmyr Gibbs played really well. He had a big game. He had a couple of touchdowns in this matchup. So it was going to be tough to stop that rushing attack of the Lions. And Jared Goff, we said it the first, few weeks of the season, wasn't really playing great, but he has really turned it up. And he has been great these last few weeks, getting the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They might be without Jameson Williams because I believe he's facing a suspension. I don't know if that was made official just yet for violating the performance-enhancing drugs policy, I think. So I just want to take a quick look at that, see if that was made official yet. And he's been playing good for this year. Yeah, so performance-enhancing substance policy. Yep. Yeah, so he's facing a 2-game suspension. So he is going to miss the next 2 games. But yeah, he's been having a good year for them. And so losing him for the next 2, that kind of hurts the Lions. But once they get him back, that's another weapon. But yeah, you got Sam Laporta, who hasn't been great so far this year, but I mean he's going to have big games. The Lions are a very good team, and right now they are the best team in the NFC. They're the best team in the NFC. But I have 2 teams in the AFC ranked ahead of them right now. But number 3 is not bad. So right now they control the number 1 seed in the NFC. They're playing good football. But yeah, losing Aiden Hutchinson and now Jameson Williams suspended for a couple games does hurt them. More so the Aiden Hutchinson injury, because you're going to get Jameson Williams back. But this team is still very good, and they just continue to roll. So we move on to the number 2 spot. I got the Baltimore Ravens. They're really rounding into form, especially on offense. I mean, Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdown passes the other night. Derrick Henry continues to run the football well. What a great fit. Again, probably the signing of the offseason is Derrick Henry to the Ravens. He's been great. 30-year-old running back, doesn't matter. The guy is unbelievable. And Lamar Jackson's playing really well. I mean, this team, I still don't understand how they blew that game to the Raiders. They should really only have 1 loss. Or you could even say, hey, they should be undefeated right now if they beat the Chiefs in week 1. They're playing great. Mark Andrews had a good game the other night. The defense, there's still some concerns. I mean, they still gave up a ton of points to the Bucs. But, they'll step up when they have to. I mean, this team is really good. But unfortunately, I still can only put them at 2 because of who is at number 1. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs. They still found a way to win with the injuries that they're dealing with at the wide receiver position. Their defense is playing really well once again this year. It's one of the best defenses in football. And, they gave Brock Purdy a hard time on Sunday, even though he was missing a lot of guys out there. But, I mean, you gotta like what the Chiefs are doing. It's not pretty, but they're still able to find ways to win. They take on the Raiders next week. They take on the Bills soon. So I'm curious to see if that's the game that the Chiefs finally lose. But they just acquired DeAndre Hopkins, so we'll see how he fits with this team. Again, I expect him to help out in some capacity. It might not be the same DeAndre Hopkins that we once knew back with the Texans and the Cardinals, but I think he can help. And Mahomes has not been great this year. Travis Kelce has not been great this year, but they're still able to win. And it could be, again, one of those years where, maybe the offense isn't great throughout the year, similar to last year, and you get guys back. You get Pacheco back. You have Hopkins now. And then you get to the playoffs and they turn it up. It's just, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm really curious to see what team is going to be the team that knocks them off. I want to know. Who's it going to be? Like I said, they play the Bills soon. Can the Bills be that team? They play the Texans later in the year. Could it be the Texans? Who knows? But yeah, this is my top 5. So to go through it again, Packers at 5, Vikings at 4, Lions at 3, Ravens at 2, and the Chiefs we have at 1. Let me know what you guys think about this top 5. What would your top 5 be? Let me know in the comments. And with that, that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love. We got the NBA back. We had a couple of games last night, so make sure to check out Nelson's podcast, the basketball podcast, to get his takes on the games from last night. The Celtics blowing out the Knicks, and the Lakers defeating the Timberwolves we got to see LeBron James and his son Bronny James on the court at the same time, which was cool to see. So make sure to check him out, get his takes on both of those games. The World Series is coming up on Friday. As you can see, I am all ready with all the Yankee stuff, of course. Really excited for that. Obviously, the NHL is back as well. You got college football in full swing, and college basketball is going to be back soon as well. So a lot on the table coming up. And so make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. I greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.